Dr. Jazz.
But yeah, thanks for sending the whole thing. I mean, it's a lot of music, and
yeah, definitely. I mean, it represents maybe 6 years though. So instead of putting out 3 albums over the course of 6 years, it's just all one.
Yeah. I mean, I want to start our talk with this album actually, because you know, first of all, I mean, your compositions, I already loved it since Mannequins came out, which was what, 6 years ago? And you know,
Yeah.
how do you write music? I listened like twice or 3 times today to Race, the tune on the second album, and it's, you know, I love technical death metal, and I teach that stuff, and it reminds me like Tim Byrne meets Meshuggah or something. But how do you write music? I mean, what's your process usually? So
yeah, I mean, for that tune, I was thinking about it like everyone in the band has to run the gauntlet, and it's like this form that has all these different kind of like obstacles that you have to improvise through. So just almost like an obstacle course or something. But in general, I mean, I think a lot about well, the starting point is always different. Like sometimes it starts with a rhythmic idea, sometimes it starts with some pitch collections, sometimes it's an idea for a form, sometimes it's just like an abstract feeling or sort of just like a zone of something I'm imagining. So it's always different, and then there's always a lot of manipulation of material. Well, not, I mean, it really changes every time. And across the whole album, there are so many tunes that have things related to other tunes. Like there's a tune on disc 3 that's a lot of sort of these unison polyrhythmic chords that the band is playing, and there's sort of like a round robin improvising everybody's kind of like dovetailing and like weaving through this form. And you know, there's stuff like that, like cross connections between all the tunes on all the discs. So there's a lot of you know, cannibalizing of material.
Yeah. How do you as a drummer treat your tunes? You know, because you said it's like an obstacle course. I mean, I did this talk with Matt, right? And Matt tunes are sometimes the same. It's like a competition between you guys who can write more difficult stuff. But as a drummer, I mean, like, how do you?
I mean, we're not trying to.
No, I'm kidding. But as a drummer, how do you approach, you know?
Oh, you froze.
Oh, sorry. You hear me now?
Yeah, I thought you were done because you froze. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just wanted to ask you how you approach as a drummer your tunes. I mean, like when you have a lead sheet, like extremely complicated. I mean,
I mean, if I'm writing it, I think I usually have an idea. Well, sometimes I have an idea of how I'm gonna approach it and play it, but yeah, sometimes I don't know, and it's a challenge for me as a drummer. There are some tunes where I've made drum demos because I always send the band like a demo with a click of just, you know, exporting MP3 from Finale, just, you know, the notation software I use. And sometimes I'll make drum part demos just to give them an idea of what I'm going to play. Like there's a tune that's all in 7/9, and the thing I was envisioning for the drums to be doing wasn't really just either one of that layer, sort of like a weird composite with other rhythms mixed in. And I think if I just showed up to rehearsal and did that, it would be really confusing for everyone. So I like made a demo of something like in the ballpark of what I was imagining. But then that ended up being something that I practiced as an exercise, and then that helped my ability to just like play the tune. So making exercises for myself is definitely something. I will say the thing about the obstacle course, that was just that one tune. Like
sure.
That's not a concept for any of the other tunes.
No, I know. But it's just like you know, the meters change so much, or there's so much polyrhythms in it that it's really sometimes like you know, I mean, obviously the band is killing, so that makes it easy, but still, like, I'm just like sometimes like trying to catch.
It's not easy for us. We all. Yeah, I mean, we all worked really hard to play this music. Like it was not. It's not like it was easy for us, but it was, you know, it was possible. So that's something. The reason for using a lot of this kind of rhythmic material is just because we like how it feels. And by we, I'm referring to me and Matt, because you mentioned Matt also. But like, I like how it sounds, and I like how it feels, amazing. And it's like even just the sensation of playing like that tune I mentioned that's all in 7 against 9. The first track on disc 3. It's like this psychedelic feeling that you get to sometimes, where it's like a point of, you know, you start feeling any rhythm like that, any new polyrhythm, as a composite, as one thing. But then after a while, your perception, you know, it's like to really feel both things at once and hear each separate, like, 2 tempos. It's so trippy. It's like, it's psychedelic. It makes you feel like you're floating. It's really wild. And then just as a listener, just the way certain rhythms, like, you know, butt up against each other and collide creates a feeling. It's all about the feelings that get created from it for me. Like it's not like I'm gonna try to write some challenging music. It's just what I like.
Yeah, I love this stuff because it's also, you know, I think that the line between, at least how I hear it, composed and free, also it's so thin. Which you know, there's many times it goes composed section, and then I feel it opens up, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe I hear it like that, and then it goes into composed again. But like, is that a lot that you kind of investigate? I mean, like that you go into open sections and again into composed, or was it a lot composed?
Yeah, the way that composing and improvising is integrated is pretty different. Tune to tune. It's something I definitely think about, like finding different ways to sort of, you know, sometimes the composed parts can feel improvised and improvised parts can feel composed. There's some totally open sections. There's some open sections that are on forms. There's some open sections that have, I'm just kind of going through in my head. There's some that are kind of like built into the tunes. There's some that are, let's see. Yeah, there's somewhere the only parameter is that there's some composed element happening at the same time, but it's otherwise open. But yeah, there's a bunch of different forms.
Choose, yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Like, why three albums? I mean, did you, when you recorded the album, I mean, like, is like there a conceptual sense why you selected some tunes on each CD?
Yes, yeah, definitely. It's a little, you know, I've been trying to get better at verbalizing it because I have to write a press release. Unfortunately, it's like a thing you have to do.
Oh yeah.
But it's so abstract in my head. It's like there's like a feeling I associate with all the tunes on disc 1 and a feeling I associate with all the tunes on disc 3. Like those are the more acoustic ones, and then the electric, more aggressive and doomy one is in the middle. But like the distinction between disc 1 and 3 is like disc 1, I sort of imagine this kind of like magic thing, like a dark sort of like 3 a.m. middle of the night out in the woods or in a field with like a certain, like, it's not that literal. It's just I'm just trying to describe a
That's good press release sentences there. You should like cut this.
right. But yeah, that's sort of like feeling like the things that you can't really quantify, like you can't place your finger on what it is, just like the ineffable or intangible things that don't have an explanation, and tunes that have something related to that quality.
Okay.
And like there's an arc, like toward the end of the disc, it gets a little dark, like it ends with an electronic piece that to me feels sort of like foreshadowing what disc 2 is going to be like. And then disc 2, to me the arc is like, it's just this relentless, like, you know, first it's like a 1-2 punch of these kind of like aggressive tunes, a lot of just like violence, rage, aggression, and it just like, to me, you know, it gets darker and darker, and then
dark, yeah.
Cloud 8 is like, you know, polyrhythmic doom, something real. That's sort of like the height of the darkness to me. And then there's you know, and then there's like gradually a shift, and then it sort of starts to turn back to that. And then I think disc 3 is all pieces that I associate with like different types of light, like really like bright, hot, blinding light, like winter light, like different kinds of, and again, it's all just like I'm using light to describe it, but I'm not thinking of it that literally. It's really just like an abstract musical sound feeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'll re-listen to with this in my mind now also to the album to see. But no, it's beautiful. It's like the entire. It's such an entity, you know. It's long, but it goes by like this, at least for me. I mean, I don't know.
Thanks.
Have you guys played this music live already?
A lot of it, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, some of it we've been playing for years, and then some of it was new as of last fall, and we never played it live. We just recorded it. There's even some tunes on, I think there's 2 tunes on disc 2 that we've never played as a band in the same room.
Wow, okay.
Because we recorded it remotely. So that, I mean, that was fun. I mean, it's interesting to write and take advantage of, like, knowing that that's going to be the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I enjoyed having that option.
I'm really curious to hear this band live. I mean, if you kind of make it to Europe, would be amazing to see you guys. I mean, it's
yeah. I mean, it would
very modern. I mean, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the live version of this going forward is going to be really deconstructing some of these tunes and improvising with smaller chunks of them.
Yeah.
And kind of like reassembling things together. Yeah.
Oh, but it's so cool. I really like it. I mean, it's so complex yet groovy. You know, I like this stuff. It's like when I listen to, you know, it reminds me of Tyshawn sometimes, or you know, Dan Weiss is kind of, but less complicated, their music than yours. So, you know, but it's grooves. I like the groove. You know, it's still groove. You know, it's beautiful. But I wanted to ask you also. You know, it's kind of your year this year. It seems like it. You did like also the with the contemporary ensemble, the VMA project, and like how did that one come about? Because that's, I kind of see, you know, hear your writing, but it's completely different. Of course, the instrumentation already. What's the story behind that one, which came out what in May, right, or April? I think.
Yeah. Well, they had the artistic director at the time, Ross Carr, approached me about writing something, and I submitted a thing in they have like an open call for submissions for commissions.
Yeah.
And they commissioned me for an 8 to 15 minute piece. And I asked if that was like a guideline or a strict limit. And they said, oh, you know, it can be like as long as you want. Just, you know, the budget is only to support an 8 to 15 minute piece. So like it could be longer, but just as long as you're okay with the budget. And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, you know, in my mind, like Matt made A Pouting Grimace, that album,
sure.
where it's like, and I look at something like that and I think, oh man, for me to do something like that would be so, like I could never afford to do that. So having someone be concerned that something doesn't pay enough for you to do it, when the alternative is you pay everyone out of pocket, is like, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna write an album.
Yeah, how did you decide for the instruments, by the way? I mean, because it's quite different.
It was, I wanted to use oboe and more different instruments than I normally write for. Like I didn't originally want to use piano and clarinet, for example, but it really came down to the specific people in ICE who were going to be playing it and who was interested in playing it. And, you know, when I thought about it, I mean, Corey Smythe, Josh Rubin is so enthusiastic about playing this kind of music. And he's a big fan of A Pouting Grimace. And so it was like, okay, well, I got to write for those guys. So, you know, it ended up being some familiar instruments, but like, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. It's not about that. So, but yeah, I like if I would have had like a 13-person ensemble, but you know, Ross talked me down. He's like, that'll be too hard to book, and then it'll never get played. So, I mean, as it is, we've only played it once.
That's the next step.
We've still only played it once as
really?
A performance, so it's not like it mattered.
No, but beautiful.
Yeah, we did the premiere at Roulette.
Yeah. Wow. You released both albums on your own, right? Your own label.
No, Fine Letter X is on Pi, actually.
Okay, it's Pi. Okay.
But but Biome is on Obliquity, and the second the duo album with Andrew Smiley I put out in July is on Obliquity too.
What's the story behind your own label? I mean, that you decided also to go that way. I mean, it's kind of like what everyone of us almost does besides the labels, but like still.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't find a label and you have to put out an album yourself, you might as well make it a thing, you know? So we just decided, all right, we want to self-release a bunch of records, keep all the profits, do all the mailings, do all the work, figure out how to do press ourselves or whatever, like do a DIY version of that. Yeah. But there's enough that we want to put out that we can't, like, there's not, like, even with Pi, like Pi is great in so many ways, but they really put out a limited number of records every year and they have a set roster. So you get one album every 2 years. And
I didn't know that.
I mean, you know, Matt knew long ago that wouldn't be frequent enough. I mean, but you know, we have other, you know, Adam Hopkins with Out of Your Head.
Yeah.
He's a you know, a friend from a while. I mean, he played in Mannequins, my first band.
Exactly, yeah.
And he put out Oblong Aplomb, Matt's album, like, you know, in between his Pi releases that he has going. So fortunately, Pi is very cool about understanding that
that's good,
we need to put out more albums.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you know, I mean, the model is often with labels these days, like maybe they cover some of the costs up front and do press, but then, you know, you're losing half the profits. And for what that's really worth, it could just make sense to just be able to have all the profits and do all the work.
Yeah.
Especially since we have a built-in art department, because I can do the album art.
I saw that. Where does this come from also? because the album art is amazing. I mean, it's
thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I've always liked to do my own album art. As a fan, I always liked when musicians did their own album art. Thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's easy enough to figure out how to do. So, you know, a lot of this stems from money saving things.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Like so much, even just like the original decision to make a triple album stemmed from a economical reason, which ended up not really saving money. But at the time, I was thinking that it would save on physical production because you could have like a wallet,
Yeah.
and it's sturdy enough with the 3 discs that it doesn't need a tray like a digipack. So I was like, yeah, it's like just as cheap as like a digipack to do a triple wallet, and then I could, you know, like I put out Mannequins, and I'm like, I can't afford to do this every year. Like how can I keep up with my composing and put it out? And I just thought, okay, I'll just put out one album every 3 years that's a triple and use like a wallet. But then of course there's so much text that a wallet wasn't enough space, so we needed like a crazy packaging design. And it's really cool. It's like a plus shape when you unfold it, and there's a lot of different art on all the panels when you open it up. It's really cool. But yeah, it was not cheaper. Did not save money.
But yeah.
Maybe but yeah, I'm always kind of like trying to figure out, but like, you know, everything that stems from trying to save money ends up being like the cooler option in its own way. Like doing your own art is awesome. I think it's way better. I would much rather see someone's like stick figure drawings than like hire some graphic designer and it's like this slick design that doesn't really have as much to do with their musical vision. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
It's just like what you're saying now. It's like, I think every one of us is doing this the last, 10, 20, 30 years. Like, just I've learned how to mix and master like 10 years ago just to save money. I was like, shit, I have to learn this. Now I mix and master everything I record. We go to a studio or wherever. I just take the tapes and, and then you save up like 1,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
100 euros and stuff like that. Yeah. So it makes sense. Absolutely.
And then your records sound better because they sound how you want them to sound.
And I love doing it. I love spending time like tweaking the bass drum or whatever. Like, oh man, shit, this is cool. You pan it, or I don't know. But in the end, you save money. So that's, with this kind of music, I think that's so important in a way. So,
yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it's cool. That's fantastic that you do that. It's, although sometimes I think it's, you spend a lot of time practicing your instrument and writing music and composing, and then in the end, we still have to do sometimes the design or the mixing or the mastering. So it's kind of like, now, and then the press release and sending it out. And, in the end, it's like, shit, that's a lot of work for one album. So it's like, but it's worth it. Come on.
Yeah.
But Kate, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned before doom and kind of light also, but like you as a composer, I mean, or as let's go first, drummer. I mean, you must have a really wide variety of influences, or like, how did you get into all this mess of music that you play now? Kind of, it's like, I hear so many influences and styles in your drumming, and it's incredible. But like, what got you into improvised music and also like drumming, let's say, I mean, like in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I started playing drums because I had been playing violin in like 3rd and 4th grade. Oh, really? And I didn't it was fine, but like that wasn't I knew that wasn't really my instrument. And I just thought drums looked fun. Like that was it. I just thought it looked fun. And and then I got more seriously into music in high school and sort of got led down a very traditional jazz path which is great because I have a love of a lot of traditional jazz actually. And then in college that started opening up a little bit. And then like right at the end of college, I started sort of finding out about more music that was happening in Brooklyn and some of the more creative, forward thinking music that like stems from the jazz tradition, but isn't quite that.
Yeah.
And and as far as like metal, I mean, I really only knew about Meshuggah in college. And then it wasn't until I moved here and Matt and I became friends, and he knows so much music, it's insane. He's like a walking music library. He worked in a music library for years too. I mean, but he knows more music than anyone else I know. It's just totally insane. So pretty much I would say 95% of the metal I know is because of Matt, which is, I mean, there's just so much. It's, and he'll spend hours and hours on Bandcamp just like finding metal bands.
Oh wow, really? Okay.
And it's great. And then it's cool because then I find out about the ones that kind of pass his filter. So it's sort of like having my music curated a little bit. And I go on Bandcamp and check stuff out too, but just not as quite as obsessively as Matt, which is,
Yeah. Did you then like learn like when you went, first the jazz phase?
What do you mean?
Did you play standards and stuff like that also when you were in high school or in college? You went
Yeah.
to that phase as well, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean that was where I started. I was like a jazz drummer.
Really?
Like, I have a binder this thick of just transcriptions of,
Wow.
I mean, maybe even like a third of that is Philly Joe and, like all the,
And then you went to
Yeah.
Meshuggah and then you played like tunes like Bleed and stuff. I mean, did you learn that stuff? Like
No, I mean, I don't think Bleed was out then. I mean, this was,
okay.
This was 2000,
Oh, yeah,
2008.
sure, that was later. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I had no, I still have, I don't have metal drumming chops. Like I did not, I was really discouraged from playing double pedal when I was younger. And that's the one thing that, I would change because it's so much easier. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's not necessarily easier to learn that technique when you're younger, aside from the fact that you have more time to practice. But yeah, it's something I've kind of just started working on recently. But yeah, all my teachers were like, "Oh, just focus on what you can do with one pedal." And I was like, "Yeah, that's more tasteful." Like, no, I want the chaos. I want the
Yeah. No, I love
I
that.
want the density.
Yeah.
So now I have to figure it out at like age 37.
How to do that? Yeah, no, but fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I didn't imagine you playing standards. Like when I listen to you play, like
Oh yeah, I've really there's a lot
Wow.
of things that were in my playing that I consciously tried to like get out of my playing.
Interesting.
Because I don't, I don't want to be playing like licks and vocabulary.
Sure. Yeah,
and
sure.
even to a degree when you're improvising, I mean, there's a mode of doing that where you're really improvising in the language, but you're not playing licks. And that's, I felt good in that place, but then there's a point where after a while, I just, want something more. And there's just certain things that, like taking a free improvised set, like an open improvisation, and then the kind of language that you end up playing in that and making it, and kind of like studying yourself in a way, like what are the kinds of things I tend to hear and why, and analyzing it and working to expand that, and taking it and applying it to situations where you're playing in time.
Yeah.
taking vocabulary from sort of maybe complex compositions and applying that, and integrating that into your improvising, and really going through all these processes that are related to but different from the jazz tradition.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've been interested in.
How have you learned your learning process there, or curve, like in the beginning, coping with odd meters and with complex structures? How did you practice that? Like, I mean, what was your path there? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I played along with a lot of music that was in odd meters, both the sort of like big odd meters, like that you might find in like Dave Holland's music, and like the like little odd meters, like Balkan music, like where it's just like a fast 5 or fast 7 or 11 or 9 or 15 or whatever. And Steve Coleman's music, studying that, just kind of like getting used to lots of different combinations of 2s and 3s and layering them and like keeping multiple things in your head at once. And like at the time I was in high school, he had a lot available for free on the Embase website, so that was like a useful resource at the time. That's something I still think about in terms of having some kind of a philosophy of having some of your music available for free, so it's like accessible to people and not this like elitist thing that only people with money can access and learn about. But also you have to make a living, and music is so devalued, and people expect music to be free now, so you have to charge money for it to keep doing it, and like figuring out a balance between those things, because that was so key for me, like when I was coming up. But yeah, like Balkan music definitely helped a lot with polyrhythms, because then dealing with like Matt's music, for instance, or any music that has like tuplets and the kind of polyrhythms where you're subdividing in really quick, small subdivisions in order to get the bigger polyrhythm. To subdivide that fast, it helps if you can hear odd groupings that fast. Like if you can, so playing along with Balkan music actually really helped with stuff like Matt's music.
Really interesting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like if there's like a big 7 against 5, you have to subdivide it in 7 to get the bigger 7 over the 5. And you have to think like that, and if you can, you have to be able to like think that like faster than you can say it sometimes. Yeah. So I think playing along with tunes that are like dun 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 dun, like that helps.
Yeah, sure.
And being able to like place accents anywhere in that, so it's maybe a good prerequisite for polyrhythms is Balkan music.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I remember like years ago, my aunt lives in Serbia. I'm in Slovenia, and you listen like to a gypsy band in Serbia playing those 7s, on a tapan, and like with tuba and brass section. It's just like, it's so natural what they're doing, he doesn't know what he's doing like mathematically, but it's just like in them, and it's like, man, that's sick. It's just
and like the way tapan players phrase too, I think has really affected my phrasing and how I hear those rhythms. Just always like whenever there's a 3 playing on the 3rd part of the 3, and just kind of like parsing it out that way.
Interesting. Like how did you entering the the Brooklyn or the New York scene, what were your first connect? I mean, obviously you played now with Tim Byrne, and with Matt you have a long story going on, but like what were your first connections when you came to the scene, like first gigs? And
I didn't know anyone, so
that's heavy.
I think I went to shows and I just tried to talk to people at shows, because I figured people at the same shows would be into the same music, like if we were both there. We probably had some common tastes.
Yeah.
So I played sessions with some people. I did Sim, which I just finished teaching at this past week. But I went there twice as a student, the second time right when I moved. And that sort of helped me meet a lot of people. Like, I think early on I played a gig with Michael Formanak that Chris Davis was, it was trio with Chris Davis, and that was
beautiful.
And then like Marty Ehrlich was in the audience, then he asked me to play, and then
really? Oh wow.
You know, those were a couple of gigs like within the first year I moved to New York, and I was like, so like I moved there and I was like, I'm not gonna have a gig for 10 years. I'm gonna have to like grind and have like a 9 to 5 and live in a shoebox apartment with no windows and cockroaches, and it's just going to be like terrible, and I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm not going to have any gigs, and I'm just going to have to wait and just try and keep trying. And then I was like, oh no, everyone wants to play. This is an awesome scene. And it was just like finding my people, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Yeah. What about band leading? I mean, when did you start leading bands? I mean, Mannequins came out in 2017. Like, how did you decide to do that album? And did you already previously lead bands or groups? I mean,
it happened pretty fast for me. Like, I didn't start writing music until my senior year of college. And then I moved to Toronto for 3 years, and I wrote a little more music, and the tunes that I wrote when I was in Toronto were all in the category of like tunes that sound like my version of things that I like, that aren't that different from them. And then toward the end of my time in Toronto, I started getting to some different shit. And then when I moved to New York, it just kind of aligned with that point in my composing, where there's a shift, and my composing really just became like kind of how I write now, I guess.
Yeah.
Or just more mature, more like each composition is its own thing and not like related to something I heard.
Yeah.
Like music I heard of someone else's.
So I know what you mean. Yeah. Interesting. Did you find it heavy to lead bands? I mean, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as that shift happened in my composing, I was like, oh, okay, now I can write a bunch of tunes and make an album. And I just kind of, because you have to like balance these ideas of like, you don't want to rush anything. Everything takes as long as it takes. It's not good to put out an album before you're ready. You want to have something to say, not just like do it just to do it. But also, if you wait too long, it might never happen. So there's a point where you have to kind of decide. And people always say like, don't compare yourself to other people, but I find it really useful as like a guideline. Like, okay, Ben Monder, for instance, just as someone who I was listening to at the time, who writes really complex music.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, if I'm going to write music that's really challenging, I can't compare myself to people who put out an album every year and it's like easy tunes, because it's not the same. But okay, so like maybe how many albums did Ben Monder make of his material in the first 10 years after he lived in New York? Yeah. Or Miles Okazaki, for instance, was
sure.
I'm a huge fan of and is also a friend. And I think he maybe had like 3 albums in 10 years or something.
Yeah,
Mirror Generations, Figurations.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, okay, yeah, like 3 solid albums in 10 years is like maybe a good minimum to aim for. So yeah, I kind of thought about, all right, so I should probably try to have my first album out by the time I'm 30 or 29. I think for Elvin had his debut album at 29, I think.
Okay, that was a good philosophy. Yeah. Cool.
I don't know why, like, it's like a random fact that I remembered that I had in my head, which is like, a totally weird comparison, because again, totally different music, totally different timeline of development, like, you know. But I mean, it can be useful because, like, if you compare yourself to Tony Williams at 18, then you're screwed.
Okay, sure,
So,
yeah, that's okay. No, it's good. I like this.
So yeah, I mean, I made a band and I got the music together and just kind of was like, all right, I'm going to try to record by, and you know, I had to save it. Part of it was determined by finances, you know, having to work enough hours in a coffee shop to pay everyone enough. And band leading is expensive. When you're young, it's hard. So
yeah. It's like you're lucky you don't lose too much money. I mean, especially going on tour or like insane. But you know, playing with Matt and being with Matt, how do you guys, do you talk about composition a lot, or like do you present to each other music and, you know,
I mean,
like how does this go, you know?
Well, Matt likes to get really caffeinated and then talk about composing like crazy. It's really funny. So we have a lot of mornings where it's just like you know, all these ideas, and I'm kind of, when I'm composing, I'm very secretive about it. Like I won't compose at the piano because I don't want him to hear what I'm playing. Okay. So I'll use like headphones plugged into a keyboard. And he'll be like, oh yeah, what are you, show me what you're doing. And he's always really curious. And I'm like, no, I'm not writing anything. But then when I'm ready, I'll be like, check this out. So look what, you know, and then I'll be really talkative about it. But yeah, we'll talk about ideas for projects that are, there's a lot of collaborative talk behind both of our projects, I think. Like even bands of his, like, you know, I'll say what I think about his ideas and what my ideas would be for them, and he'll always have input in my bands.
Yeah.
And then we have this Gloat Meal project where it's just any of our music that doesn't fit into any of our other bands or projects. And that's, you know, we talk about ideas for that a lot.
Yeah. Is it
but yeah, we're pretty.
No, sorry, I wanted to ask you, like, does the balance change a lot when you lead a band or when he leads a band?
The balance of what?
I don't know, when you're a band leader and he's like your sideman, and then he's the band leader and you're his sideman. I mean, like, or
I would say it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
Matt tends to want to speak up in rehearsals of mine. Maybe a little bit more than I feel a need to speak up in his rehearsals. But maybe I'm a more
open band leader in a sense, not so strict, or no?
I mean, I like people in my band to speak up.
Yeah.
And you know, Jeremy's so quiet sometimes, and it can, I think, yeah, and Kim often won't. You know, Jeremy and Kim are quiet. You know, they're not quiet in the sense of being like quiet people, like they're goofballs and we're like talking and joking around a lot. But as far as having like strong musical opinions,
yep,
I think it makes it seem like Matt is more, I don't know the word. It can highlight how much Matt speaks up sometimes.
Okay.
Whereas I think, like in Phalanx Ambassadors, for example,
yeah,
where I'm a sideman in Matt's band. Yeah, I think it feels more like we're all like me and Miles and Patty and Kim are a little bit more similar in terms of how much we speak up. So But yeah, I mean, it's not that different. I think we both do a good job as
sure.
sidemen for each other.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of our like rehearsal behavior.
I find it cool. I mean, it's because you're both on the same zone, really, like this highly complex music, and quite cool. I mean, I like that. Really cool. I wanted to ask you this, Kate. Like,
Matt's 10 years older than me too. I feel like.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I was just saying because like I think sometimes like people compare musicians who are like a couple, but Matt's like a different generation. Like he's 10 years is pretty significant.
Sure,
and
yeah.
So that's just, I don't know, that's something I feel weird when people compare us like we're in the same place, because we're not, you know?
Yeah.
Like we're in totally different places in our careers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
Definitely. Yeah.
I just felt the need to mention that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah. But still, you have some people who kind of you both played with. I wanted to ask you your experience playing with, Tim Byrne, who's one of the DIY first guys who started to do it, like in the late 70s. And how did that story with Tim begin also for you? And especially Dave Douglas. I mean, like all these guys, like how did these stories for you begin? And playing with them, I mean.
Yeah. Well, with Tim, I transcribed Eye Contact when I was in Toronto.
Oh, really?
Which is like a 50-minute long piece. And I transcribed it from the DVD that comes on like the album Seconds. And I took a lesson with him, and yeah, I think it was through Sim, or maybe it was before Sim. I took a couple different lessons with him at different points, and then Tim was just very generous. Like one time I wanted to buy a t-shirt from him, and I walked over to buy it, and he was like, instead of paying me, do you want to practice some tune? Do you want to pay me by practicing some tunes with me?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, are you kidding? That's like, I should pay you for the lesson. So, and Tim is always like that. He's like such a generous person and really, supportive of younger musicians that are serious. And he actually said early on, I think, after the first lesson I had with him, I guess he called Matt and was like, hey, there's this drummer you should play with. Like, she might be really good for your music. Like, she can read and improvise. And, like just being able to do both of those things well enough, I think is, if you can do that, you can work in New York.
Yeah.
So, Matt and I already had met and knew each other and were becoming friends. And then the second lesson I had with Tim, he said, you should play with this guy, Jeremy Viner. And I was like, okay, Tim said Jeremy Viner. I got to find Jeremy Viner. And he ended up becoming one of my best friends. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Tim knows how to bring the right people together.
How did the lessons with Tim go? I mean, what did
Oh yeah, I thought we were going to talk about composition, and I thought we were going to like talk about like theory and like kind of dissect some of the harmonies and what I transcribed. And he kind of like said a few things about it, and then he's like, hey, do you want to play? Like, let's just play. And that was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the thing. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so we just played, and we played some of Tim's tunes duo. I think maybe Son of Socket, and there's two that have socket in the name that I mix up. But yeah, I mean, pretty much then every time I played with him that was like a session after that was just playing.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What about Dave Douglas?
I mean, I haven't played with Dave that much as Tim.
Yeah.
Just we did one tour in Europe, and then we did a couple gigs with Uri Kane, and that was cool. Those gigs were very like open, play whatever I want. A little bit more like freewheeling things. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I listened to Tiny Bell in college a lot, and yeah.
Cool. Kate, what's on the schedule for you for this year still, like touring wise, playing wise? I mean, obviously you're gonna promote the record.
I'm playing on Matt's. Right. Yeah. I mean, as far as significant gigs, I'm playing on a couple nights on Matt's Stone Week. I have the Fine Letter X CD release October 31st on Halloween. And I'm playing in Gordon Bieferman's organ trio. There's a CD release, album we recorded. It's me and him and guitarist Anders Nilsson.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's coming up. I'm playing on Anna Weber's Stone Week in September this month. I'm not sure which night yet. I'm gonna play with Tim at Lowlands in October.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, really, I'm kind of, and I don't want to talk too much about it because it's not a fully formed idea yet, but I have an idea for my next project that I'm going to do, which is going to involve a pretty intense period of study and practice of a couple things first. I don't even want to say what they are, but I'm kind of just thinking about that this fall. There's some specific things, specific drumming topic and a specific harmony.
That's the
topic.
secretive part now of you, right? Now.
Yeah, right.
Because now I'm really like, shit, what is it? Like, but okay.
Yeah, hopefully it'll happen and you'll find out.
Cool. Great. Do you have any plans of bringing this band to Europe or for a tour or?
Man, it's so I don't know how to do it and not lose money, and like I don't think anybody is like as far as booking agents. Like I would need somebody to be interested in booking it for me.
Yeah,
and I don't think I'm like big time enough yet to have that happen. So, I would rather focus my limited financial resources on making more albums than touring.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great to do both.
Yeah, but after COVID, it's gotten even harder, I think. It's
I mean, I think fees are down everywhere, like nothing pays as much.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's true across the board. I keep hearing from other musicians and yeah,
it's hard. But well, it's still fun. But
yeah. I mean,
great.
maybe we'll see. Now that Jeremy just moved to Berlin, so maybe he's got some connections and yeah.
Oh wow, man. That's good info to know. Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, good for Europe. I mean,
I have to use this info actually.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
I mean, he's a monster. I'm sure he'll.
Oh man, I love
he'll
him,
work a lot.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, quite cool. Right.
Yeah.
But cool. Okay, thanks so much. I'll leave you be. What is today? Sunday. Nice Sunday afternoon still. So, and
yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for sharing some of these things and.